What up, YouTube? All right, peace, everybody. So, this video is going to be called The Power of Changing Definitions of Words. And we're starting right here with female. So, female, this is added recently with the midst of controversy of what is a woman. As you see in 1B, they added this to the definition in Merriam-Webster dictionary. It says having a gender identity that is opposite of male. Now, people may be like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" This is just the times that we're in now. People can identify as a woman, you can identify as a man, you can identify as non-binary or whatever. The issue is that once you start changing the definitions of words, you're changing a lot of history. You're changing a lot of the future. And really, you can't change the history. You're really just changing the present for to get prepared for a changed future, because once you start understanding that now a female is not what we traditionally thought of a woman being born a female, a man being born a man, now you can become a female. So that must mean that there ultimately is going to be a superior class of female or a superior class of women. And there's going to be an inferior class of female or women. And that is going to cause issues with the genetically um, born female, because they're going to see it as inferior. So the trans female, or the woman who identifies as a female, in their definition, is going to have more rights. They're going to receive the benefits of what women normally would benefit, which would include the reproductive rights, which is most important, because again, this is all about population control. Allegedly, it's about population control. They do not want women to give birth. That's why they push a deletion of the fetus so hard. I don't want to say that word. I almost got strike. But that's why they push that so hard, because they don't want the population to grow. That's why they don't they want one man, one woman, and for a lot of things, for population control. But in general, this is what I talk about, the definition of a female that was changed. And I want to get into the reason why that is important, because they have done this for the last few hundred centuries, in order to push a narrative that they want to push. So this is the etymology dictionary website. So you can pick words, and it will basically tell you the origin of those words and how they were used at a certain time period. So this is the word brunette. Now we know brunette as a woman who has, let's say, dark brown hair or black hair. But let's read about the origin of brunette. So brunette, of a woman, dark in complexion, having a brownish tone to the skin and hairs. 1660. So in the 1600s and prior, when you called a woman a brunette, you were referring to her skin tone, her skin complexion, and her hair. It wasn't just her hair, it was her skin complexion. So that's why when you read about European history, especially in the Middle Ages, a lot of the women that we know about, who are the monarchs and the queens of that time, they were described as brunettes, like Anne Boleyn, who was the wife of Henry VIII, and her daughter Queen Elizabeth the First. They were brunette, meaning they were dark skinned women. And so was Henry VIII. He had Norman lineage and uh, Welsh lineage, but Anne Boleyn and her daughter Elizabeth, they were so-called black women, dark skinned black women. And also Anne Boleyn, she was called a crow. That's where we get the name, or the word Jim Crow from. Crow has always been a racial epithet towards so-called black people, because of how dark a crow was. It was a way to insult them. And so was Shakespeare. You can read about Shakespeare was called a crow. He was called an uppity crow. He was a very cocky young dude. But that's how we know certain people in the Middle Ages were so-called black people, by some of the words that they were described as. But that's just going into a tangent. But I wanted to talk about how they do that to change words, because when you can control the words, you can't necessarily change the history, but now you can control the future of that word, and apply that to a new group of people. So now when you see brunette, you think about, the so-called white woman, Caucasian woman with dark brown hair, but that wasn't the case, a few hundred years ago. So I say that again because this article I want to put up. I found this Evolve Groundbreaking Jewish Conversations. It says being white is not the Jewish norm. How the Mishnah can help us deconstruct a white normative approach to Judaism. Now we know the Mishnah is a part of the Talmud. That's part of the Jewish scriptures that the rabbis use in rabbinic Judaism. That they use basically on par with the scriptures, or what they call the Tanakh. But let's read about this article. It came out 2020 in December. While white Jews might take for granted that ancient Jews look like them, the evidence is otherwise. Interesting. Let's read about that. As white Jews are trying to challenge racism within the Jewish community and the wider American society, many are looking for guidance in traditional Jewish sources. However, there are not many places in the early rabbinic literature that can help us deconstruct such biases. The Mishnah tractate Nagim, or blemishes, offers one of the few insights into the rabbinic conceptions of race, or rather distinct human skin colors. Basically, this was the way that the Mishnah described the what the scriptures would call leprosy. It was a way that they could distinguish certain blemishes in the skin. So the tractate itself deals with various forms of um, zarat, a leprosy-like disease mentioned in the Torah, portions Tazria and Mezora. In this context, Nagayim chapter 2, verse 1 explains that the bright zarat spot in the Germani appears as dull white, and the dull white spot in the Cushi appears as bright white. Rabbi Ishmael says the children of Israel are like box wood, neither black nor white, but an intermediate shade. When it says Germani, I guess they're going to talk about, but Germani was what we would call a traditional white European, and Kushi was what we would describe as a black African. Um, so he said that they weren't neither black. The children of Israel weren't black or white. They were intermediate shade. They were boxwood. That's what he would call boxwood. So they're gonna get we're gonna get into what boxwood is, but let's keep reading. On one level, this Mishnah deals with a purely clinical challenge, how to diagnose the zarat on various shades of skin. Yet it can also help us better understand our ancestors' relationship to the modern concept of quote unquote race, a category they didn't share. The specific terms in this passage are interesting. The Mishnah states that the Jew's skin is alike that of the Germani. This term is probably a loan word from the Latin Germanus and refers to the members of the Germanic tribe. The word occurs in the Mishnah only in the above cited paragraph. In the Jerusalem Talmud, there is a mention of Germani where it stands for a white person who was enslaved by Rabbi Yodan, a sage who lived in the first half of the 4th century in the land of Israel. And when they say that Germani, remember the original Germanic tribes, they were so-called people of color. That's why we get the word germ from. Germ is the original. It's a you're the upspring. You're the aboriginal. So Germanic tribes were aboriginal people. You can even read that today in conventional history. They call it the Cheddar Man. Cheddar Man was a brown skinned person of Europe. That was the original man of Europe. So they try to contort the history and say that Caucasians came from Europe because they try to get you to think that the Caucasian came from Japheth, one of the three sons of Noah, and that's not the truth. All three sons of Noah were so-called black men. Noah's sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth were all so-called black men. So the Caucasian tries to get you to convince you that he's of Japheth, and that's not the case. Apparently, slavery at this point in the Jewish history was not based on race. The rabbinic sages seem to have followed the Roman model of slavery that did not base slavery on race either. Actually, most of those enslaved by the Romans were white members of Germanic or Slavic tribes. The word Slavic itself was borrowed from the Greek skablos, slave. That's true. That's where we get the word slave from. They try to make slave synonymous with black, but slave actually comes from Slavic. That's what we call, we get the country like Yugoslavia from. That's the Eastern European. That's where a lot of the Caucasians at that time they were Slavs. They were slaves to the black, quote unquote, black nobility of Europe. The Midrashic literature also acknowledged the existence of white and black slaves alike. This decoupling of skin color from social hierarchy supports the claim that Mediterranean people of late antiquity did have different concepts of race than we do, if they had any at all. This evidence also indicates that the fusion of skin color and social hierarchies is socially constructed and subject to change, because in the history in ancient time, they didn't enslave people based off skin tone or skin color. They subjugated people based off culture. That's why, our people get confounded because they see about history and they're like, why did these black people enslave other black people? It's not that they just enslaved quote unquote black people. They had a whole different culture. So the Egyptians, or the Cushites, or they had a whole different culture from the Israelites. So they didn't see them as the same people. In the same way, the Moabites, or the Ammonites, or the Canaanites, they didn't see the Israelites as their people. Even if they spoke the same language, they said that they had different ideologies. They worshiped different gods. They had different customs. So it was easier to put certain people in subjugation because of the culture that they adhered to. But if you adhere to the same culture, even though if you didn't look necessarily alike, you knew that y'all were the same because y'all worshiped the same God. Y'all had the same customs. Y'all obeyed the same feast days. Y'all had the same sense of propriety with each other. Y'all had the same family ideals. That's what a real culture is. It's not based off of your skin color. It's about your ideologies. And that's why our people, we've been trained to think like the not modern day Caucasian who thinks with race. He's like, oh, these people must have fought each other because he was black and he was white. No, that's not the case. It's about culture. And that's why, the modern day Caucasian, he believes that white is a culture. So that's why it's difficult for them to read history in a sense of context, because they don't really adhere to culture, especially in America, in the Western society. But the Mishnah does not only differentiate Jews from members of Germanic tribes, it also states that a Gen's skin is unlike that of the Cushi. This word denotes a person from Kush, a kingdom that centered along the Nile Valley in present day Sudan and south of Egypt. The two civilizations were engaged in warfare, trade, and cultural exchange for centuries. Kush existed between 1070 BCE until 350 CE. Wow, that's over 700 years. America is just, about what, 300 years, 1776, not even 300 years. And it's already fallen. So imagine a country or a nation that's been there for 700 years. That's incredible. That is including the period of the Mishnah. Later on, the Hebrew word Cushi came to refer other Black African peoples too. For instances, the original Judeo-Arabic script of the 12th century philosophical work Khazari 1-2 mentions the Habashna. Habisha. Habisha is an ethnic or pan-ethnic identifier frequently employed to refer to Semitic language speaking peoples, mainly found in the highlands of present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea. Peoples, the Hebrew version of the text introduces them as Cushi, even though Habesha and Cushitic are different markers of identity. The Greeks called Cush Ethiopia, which literally means burnt face. That's where we get Ethiopia from. Uh, when the Macedonians or the Greeks came to Ethiopia, they called them burnt face. So Ethiopia, that's what Ethiopia means for those who don't know. Due to Greek cultural dominance, many, including Jewish translators, will later translate Cushi as Ethiopian. Thus, as the Mishnah states, Jews are neither like the Germani nor like the Cushi. Instead, the Jews' skins has, according to the Mishnah, an intermediate shade. This rabbinic perception of the Jews' skin color as brown follows those Egyptian papyri that states that Jews were honey colored. Now we know what honey color is. It's like a tan. Seen a female. She looked kind of like a little tan. Looking a little brown skin. You know what that look like. They just don't want to admit that, because if you admit that, then you like, then how the hell did they become white? They don't want to admit that. They don't want to explain that. So they just have to keep, using these colorful language. so to speak. But keep going. The Mishnah observation also reflects the self description of other Mediterranean peoples, such as Greeks and Romans, who would describe their skin color as medius internigrum el pallidum, that is halfway between black and pale. Now, come on, man. We know what they're talking about. To illustrate the Jews' intermediate shade, the Mishnah used the metaphor of boxwood. The genus or the genus of boxwood is native to many parts of the world, including the Middle East. In other parts of the Mishnah and the Babylonian Talmud, this word is referenced only as material that people made furniture out of. It's basically is wood, right? And we know what color wood is, right? Or tree bark. Interesting enough, boxwood is associated with Jews also in non-Jewish civilizations. In Islamic hadith literature, there is a teaching that boxwood in Arabic, garkat, is a tree of the Jews. Until today, Muslim extremists refer to boxwood as a traitor among the trees that will protect Jews from God's and or Muslims' wrath, as seen, for example, in 1980 Hamas Charter. All right. But even if our ancestors identified as boxwood skin and distanced themselves from the whiteness of the Germani, this should not change 21st century white American Jews' self identification as white. Even if anti Semitism in the United States is as violent as probably never before, white Jews do benefit from white privilege. Nevertheless, learning about our ancestors' self identification as Jews of color might help to challenge the widespread assumption among American Jews that being white is the Jewish norm. Now, this article, they're doing this. People may ask, why are they, kind of doing it? They're doing this because they're demonizing the so-called Caucasian right now, especially the conservative Caucasian. So the Jewish people, they're making the distinction that, hey, we may look like the Caucasian, but we're not the same. So they're waving their hands up like, hey, that's them. That's not us. They're your enemy. We're not. That's a way to hide their that's a way to hide from the target, because they're really targeting the so-called Caucasian, conservative Caucasian, because they want to strip away gun ownership right now in America, allegedly. But you see what is going on, because you can't have this next phase or the final phase of the New World Order without stripping away gun owner rights from the common person. And the one people that hold on to that with their dear life is the Caucasian, the American conservative Caucasian. So you have to demonize them now. And in order to do that, you have to release some truth. So in order to, for the Jewish people to separate themselves from the Caucasian, they have to show truth and allow that to come out to make themselves look innocent. All right. What else? Since Jewish congregations in the United States are dominated by white Jews have often trouble with perceiving Jews of color as if they were genuine part of the community. Even if white Jews acknowledge that some Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews are people of color, that does not change the widespread attitude that whiteness is the Jewish norm. This hegemonial whiteness can manifest itself also among well-intended white Jews who seek to support Jews of color, arguing that we were strangers in Egypt and know the soul of a stranger. But Jews of color are no strangers. They are no visitors. White Jews do not own Judaism. That's good. That's good that he's saying that. Today, of course, there are not only Jews who are boxwood skin, but also Jews who are white, like the Germani, or black as the Kushi. The rabbinic sages of self identification as people of color can help dismantle the current white normative approach to Judaism. While white Jews might take for granted the ancient Jews look like them, the evidence is otherwise. We can assume that it was not only the authors of the Mishnah who identified as Jews of color, but also the authors of other traditional Jewish texts, whether we are using Ashkenazi or non Ashkenazi Siddur. We are reading prayers that were mostly compiled by Jews of color. Abraham, Sarah, and the other ancestors mentioned in our daily prayers were not white either. That's true. Every time we read the Torah or other books of the Hebrew Bible, we are reading works written and edited by Jews of color, aka so called black people. Reflecting on our boxwood skin heritage might help white Jews recognize that being white is not Jewish norm. Now, this is a really good article. And again, it came out December 2020. So it's talking about, that so-called black, people were Jews. So this is a picture of boxwood, of a tree, and as we see the tree bark, we know what tree bark is. We know what color is tree bark, is brown skin. So that's why I say there was a time period when a quote unquote Jewish man was considered a brown skinned man. But now you see a Jewish man, you don't think of a quote unquote brown skinned man. So that's what I'm saying. That's the power of changing the definition of words. So as we see this happen over the past few centuries, now we see females being changed as well. So we know what's going to happen in the next days to come. So yeah, I'm just saying this video just to prepare people, but hopefully people got something out of it. And always be blessed, y'all. Peace.